Alright, here we are, making a introduction to Android Studio video just for anyone who's having trouble starting up. So I already have a previously open project right here, but in the case that we're trying to check out a project, we're going to want to choose check out a project from version control. Choose GitHub because that's where I have our project repository. You're going to want to choose our hostname as GitHub. You're going to log in. I'll create an API token, log in. So, oops, spelling my information wrong. And I think that's my information. And once you log in, I have a lot of projects, so you probably won't have a whole lot of this, but what you're going to do is go onto the GitHub repository. So if I log on to GitHub, and I'm on my account right now, so it's actually not going to show everything, but you should be able to see with the projects you're following in your repositories. You can see which one you want. What you're going to be choosing is the time application. You're going to open that. You're going to clone or download and copy this. You're then going to go back over to this, choose this as the Git repository URL, and you're going to want to choose a file to keep it in just to make it obvious that's the one you're working with, and give it whichever directory name you like. I like to keep it as what I have. Once you do have that, it will open it up, it will load the project, and everything will be kind of thrown out there. I'm going to close a lot of it so that we can have a little navigation tutorial as well. So what you're going to see is app and Gradle scripts. It takes a little while to load, and one thing a lot of people have trouble with is understanding what everything is for. So we have three things inside our app. Typically you're not going to be messing with Gradle scripts for the time being. At least for this project we're going to be using manifest, Java, and resources file. Our manifests folder holds the project itself in an XML format, so you can choose the icon you're going to be using, you can choose the label. All this stuff is being read by the phone itself whenever it's reading the app. It's like, okay, can we back up this phone, can we choose this icon, and whatever. So every time you see it, it's using this icon, and we'll get into what this means in a second. So in the Java folder, you're not going to be opening these green ones. What you want is to open this one, the gray one, and open up main activity. This is where all of our Java practice comes in handy, because this is the Java portion of Android Studio. So what you're going to want to do is just, I'm assuming we've all done some not Android Studio, some Java. So just go and test some things out, and you will be able to see everything you did in here. Maybe watch some videos if you need to on some Android Studio practices, because onCreate obviously isn't something every Java program has. It's specific to creating applications. So in the resources file, we're going to have a drawable, a layout, a bitmap, and a values. So drawable is going to have all of our backgrounds and foregrounds. So the base background and foreground is this. Whenever you have this, plug in your phone, for instance, if you have an Android and want to use a physical phone to practice with, you can just plug it straight into whichever computer you're using, and when you run your program up here, it will actually open up on your screen, as long as your phone is unlocked, I believe. And then you'll be able to test the features, and it's very quick. It takes just a second. It has to build. It'll show that it's building right here, and you'll be able to mess with it on your phone. But what will happen here is whenever you do build it on your phone, it actually does make an app on the phone. So you can go into your apps, you can see it. It'll be for the time being, it's going to be this color square with a little Android logo, and it'll have whichever name we've decided on. I believe it's going to be called time application. I'm not quite sure. you can actually check by going into Android Manifest. The label is going to be time application. And so in layout, this is where we're going to be able to have access to seeing our app. I know it looks disgusting. I don't even know what this is, but there is supposedly, I was testing it out, so I broke it, but you'll be able to see this. If and for the front end, you're going to have to make it locked down and stuff like that. I'm assuming we understand how to do that, but if not, you can always just ask me. But this is how you just go in and you can see what will happen. You can see every element over here. You can see by clicking them, you can drag them around. You can actually check their ID attributes. So in Java, you're going to need to call the ID, and you can change things from the main activity.java. But typically this page is just to look at what it should look like on a certain phone. You can choose from a list of phones. You actually do need to install certain phones sometimes. So what you can do is go, I believe it's this right here, AVD Manager. If you click AVD Manager, you can actually create a virtual device. You can use some previously made ones. I believe there's only one previously made, and that's the Pixel 2 API 25. I'm not sure though. But creating one, there are a few steps you need to go through. But this is only if you need to do a virtual phone. So in case you have like an iPhone or something like that, you'll be wanting to make an AVD. It's a little slower. It takes some time to open up and stuff. But once it is open, every time you do build your project, it will automatically update that phone instead of you having to start up the phone every single time. So since we're not going to be doing TV, Wear, tablet, we're just going to be doing phones. Use whichever you prefer. For the beginning project, we're probably not going to care too much about varying sizes of phones, but we're going to want to eventually get to the point where we can have it alternating sizes and still look good. But you just choose a phone, for instance, Nexus 5X, you click Next. You then choose whichever release you want. I chose Oreo only because as you get newer in terms of versions that are out, you actually lose a lot of customers because they don't have up-to-date phones. So you just, let's say Oreo, you can choose whether you want it in landscape or portrait. When it starts off, you can always flip it, but typically your phone's going to open up the thing in portrait. And there's some advanced settings, not really much necessary for that, but then you just click finish, and should make the new one, unless I had to name it. No, I didn't. So now you can see it's actually right here. This is the new one we made, and anytime I do want to open it up, I can. I'm not going to for the video because it does take a long time, but that's how you have access to your AVD. Alright, come on. Whatever. We'll get back to that. So, yeah, the layout is going to be very useful. You can actually check the XML form of this screen. So we can look at all of the things we made. My placeholders got apparently giant when I was doing it last time. I don't know how I did that, but what you can do is go in here, and if you start to understand the process, it's, for instance, you want to add some text, Android text equals, and then to add some text. You want to change size, text size, and so on and so forth. For Mipmap, this is the icon. So if we want to go over here, we can open this up, and this is the size of the icon in a certain format. This is in a different format, and you can actually tell as you double click them. I mean, you're going to be opening several, but it gets more and more detailed. So the very top one, actually a lot smaller and more grainy. That's because it's going to be a not as good as a phone that it's used for. So we can just close all that. I don't like cluttering everything. But now you can also check these. This is a round icon, so in case you want to use that, you can actually alternate between them. depending on whichever you want. Obviously, this is the only style that this comes with. Every single app starts with this, so if you want your own information on how to make logos and stuff like that, there are videos, but you can also just download some themes and stuff like that, or logos online, and import them into the MipMap folder. Make sure there's several sizes, and you can just use them whenever you go to your Android manifest. That's whenever you see round icon, it's actually using MipMap IC Launcher round, so you can actually tell this is what it's using. It's going to actually use all of these based on the phone, but that's the case. And then for any icon, MipMap IC Launcher is this one right here. So it just calls the folder, the subfolder, and then the files inside. For the values, this is where we're going to want to keep all of our information regarding anything that's going to be used several times. So if we go back to our app, I wrote some stuff in here. I don't know why it's giant, but I'm going to move some stuff around, I guess, a little bit. But let's say I'm making several button alarms. I'm not going to want to type out alarm every time. It's going to be really repetitive if I have like 50 alarm buttons, right? But what we can do instead is we can actually go into the text file, and we can see that it says, let's find it, timer, here it is. So it says alarm, and I set it to alarm, but what you can do is you can actually go in to the strings.xml, and you can add a new string. So string name equals, let's say alarm. Can't spell alarm today. And you can type out alarm. So what this will do, I know we are all programmers, so we do understand. You're going to save this into basically a variable you can call. So now we can go into main activity.java, or not main activity.java, we can go to activity main.xml, and instead of setting text to alarm, we can actually set it equal to at values slash strings, I believe, or is it at strings? Yeah, at string slash alarm, and now it actually is still alarm. You could see it changing as I typed it out. So now anytime I want to use a new alarm button, and I have like, let's say 50 different buttons, you can change this once, or change in the strings.xml, change alarm, and they will all change. So it's really useful for changing several pages of button texts or certain themes and stuff like that. There's also colors. You can enter the hex code for it, and it actually shows what color it is for it right here. You just give it an attribute name, and you can call that the way I said, except instead of string, it's color. And then with styles, it is basically, this is the theme page. If you ever do see on the activity main.xml, you can see that this screen is kind of it's kind of open, but there's a bar here. What actually happened in the beginning is it starts with something like this, something called dark action bar, and you can tell it actually has a big thing saying the app name. So that's just one thing you can change about it. A lot of people like to switch this to no action bar just so that you have more room to work with, and no apps do that, or at least I don't see any that do. So that's really useful. Just a quick overview of all of the folders and whatnot. But if we pulled from the whenever we got our new project and we imported from version control and chose that, it's going to build this project. And you might actually start with two things. You're going to start with main activity, I believe, and then you're going to start with Android manifest. I think these are the two things you start with. So now you know how to have access to everything else. You just open these up and you can find them. Another thing you're going to want to do though is, like I was saying before, you can actually go down here and you can look at all of the remote branches. So I have two origin branches to make sure that we have access to both if we want to stay up to date. But what we're going to be working with is the develop branch. So you just click on develop, you check it out as a new local branch, and you can just add your initials. I already have that, so I'm just going to say test. You press OK, and then it is now built. Now this is my new branch, develop test. I'm on this right now. And what happens is anytime I update this, it is directly for my local branch, develop_test. But if I want to push it, let's say I go into main activity, and on create I want to set integer x equals 1. I don't know why. Maybe it's useful in the future. I set x equal to 1, and I can now go to VCS, git, and I can push. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to commit. So I can go to commit, which is like up here as well. And you now can see everything you have changed. So you can actually see down here, there used to not be int x equals 1, now int x does equal 1. And every time you do make a commit, make sure that you add some form of message describing what you changed. So created x integer variable for testing purposes. Just so that we can understand what everybody is changing so that we're not stepping on each other's feet. You can check everything you're changing in here. So I don't remember changing this. It must have updated while I was before I did the video or something, but here we go. You can see everything I've added. I've changed the way where things are. I've changed the text of the strings. I've added alarm. And anything I don't want to add, I can just check this, and now it's not added. So if I don't want to add strings alarm, I don't have to. So now the whole alarm at that file I called in order to have alarm, it isn't going to be pushed to the develop branch. And what we're doing is we branch from develop so that we aren't pushing to master, because we want master to be a very clean application version so that we're not having to revert it several times if we break something. I don't remember changing misc, but we're going to keep it. And this is the only thing I wanted to change, so I can just commit. Typically, you just want to commit and push. There's no reason not to. It should bring up a push. It'll tell you what you changed with your description. You can check it again just to make sure, but just don't force push. Just click push. No reason to force push. And now, after it pushes, it shouldn't take long. There we go. Says what's done. And we can go on to our time application and refresh the page. And we can click on develop to jump to the branch. And now we can see it says created x integer variable for testing purposes. So it just helps keep everybody understanding what has been changed recently. You can look at all the commits. You can see everything that's happened. And yeah, that should do it for this tutorial. If y'all have any questions whatsoever, feel free to shoot me a text or email or message on the GroupMe. All right.